Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and today I'm working on both day 5 and day 3 of ByTheWell4God's The Heavenly Host devotional. I'm spelling out right now the Hebrew word for angel, and we are getting that from Psalm 104 verse 4, which says, "He makes his messengers winds, his ministers a flaming fire." And so this is the Hebrew word for angel, which means messenger, and I am typing that out with the little Matthew alpha that I had. And now I'm taking out the Cathedral Squares stamp set. Now this was released alongside this kit, but it also coordinates with a previous stamp set DIY postage stamp that was released from ByTheWell4God. Now, unfortunately, I didn't pick up that stamp set when it was released, so I don't have it, but it's a cute little postage stamp that fits perfectly around these little cathedral squares. But I'm doing something a little bit different. Since I don't have that stamp set, I'm using a die set from Holtz, and so I'm going to cut that out and make my own stamp from this. Now I've decided I'm going to use a second generation stamp because I don't want it to be too dark, so that means I'm going to take the second stamped image without re-inking that. And then I also used some clear embossing powder over that black VersaFine ink. And here's that little die that is a postage stamp, and it'll make that postage stamp look, and I will add that to my cluster in a second. This Postale Die Set from Holtz also has cute little numbers, and I knew that that would be covered up, that little part of the envelope, so I decided to die cut a little 6 out, simply because later on in this devotional we talk about some angels having 6 wings, and I thought that would just be a fun little addition to this cluster. So on this cluster, I have 2 pieces that look like vintage ephemera, but they are from Holtz. And I also have one of his mini little paper dolls. And I'm adding some of the wings from the ByTheWell4God kit behind one of these paper dolls. And I think it's just really fun and adorable to add that to the cluster. Speaking of this cluster, I know I just told you why I had the number 6 there, but I also decided to add an envelope as a little nod to angels being messengers and, writing letters and messages to people. And also you see the little paper doll has a briefcase like she is going to work, and I just thought that was a fun little addition to this. I'm also using some alcohol ink on some tape, and I'm going to cover up that fake tape on the envelope with some real tape that looks a little bit vintage. It's a little bit darker than I anticipated. Usually I use the ginger or latte color, but I decided to use mushroom alcohol ink color, and so it was just a little bit darker, but it still worked. I liked the color variation in it. And now we're putting this cluster together. As you see here, I just covered the little mess up I have on that label. I also felt like I needed a little bit more texture going on in this cluster. So you'll see me here in a second grab some mummy cloth and tear that apart a little bit and put it behind the postage stamp. Now, whenever I can with mummy cloth, I like to use my tiny attacher. It seems to hold that mummy cloth really good when you're trying to lay everything down. The glue kind of just oozes everywhere when you use it with mummy cloth. It definitely works, but whenever I can, I prefer to use that tiny attacher. I also wanted to add a mini paper clip to this to add something else. I always like adding a little bit of metal to my clusters, and now we're going to start working on this background. So with this background, I'm using Clouds of Glory, that stamp set, but I'm just using the stars. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this with some VersaMark ink and then use some clear embossing powder over this. So it's going to be hard to see in this video, and it is a little tricky with such a bulky Bible. My Bible is getting super chunky, so it's hard to show on video. But I'm just stamping it with that VersaMark ink and then using clear embossing powder over it. And then we're going to get this really fun look once we add ink to it. So this is one of my favorite techniques, and it's called resist embossing. So as you see, I'm adding some distress oxides on top, and that embossing is going to resist. So once you wipe that down, maybe with a little bit of a spray or wetness, it's going to really pop with that white. You'll see that in a second. But I'm using Stormy Sky, Faded Jeans, and Dusty Concord for my Distress Oxides. I also grabbed a Distress Mica Stain spray in Hocus Pocus, and I'll add that to it as well. The Distress Mica Stains are holiday releases, so they're not always available, but they are really fun to play with if you pick some up. It adds just a nice mica shine. As you see here, I'm just moving it around my fingers and then adding some to my brush and kind of moving that around a little bit more. So I forgot to add a little something to my cluster that I had planned on doing, so I add that. And then I'm going to come with my little spray bottle. This is my Distress spray bottle. If you do a little half pull, you get bigger drops and it creates this wonderful look in the background. It's just one of my favorites, like I said. So I love mixed media for this reason. I just love creating these backgrounds. And I'm not stopping there. I am using one of the stencils that was released this month, and I'm going to use some texture paste through it. So this is that Glory stencil, beautiful stars. I'm just picking some here and there and adding that around the resist embossing. And then on top of that, I will add some clear rock candy glitter that is also from Tim Holtz and Ranger. And that is going to add a nice little sparkle finish. I love this glitter because it's not like, there's something about glitter that I usually don't like, but the clear rock candy glitter is just clean and simple and takes on whatever color is in the background. So when you have white texture paste, it looks very just clean. And so I like using that. So I'm going to dust that off, kind of tap it off and collect the excess and put it back in my jar. And I'm going to heat set this, make sure that everything is nice and dry before I add my cluster to this page. I'll also remove this mint tape from scrapbook.com. I love this tape because it helps protect the other side of my page from all my mixed media products. And then to add this cluster, I'm also going to use scrapbook.com's score tape. It's like their version of score tape. It's going to make sure that this cluster sticks down really nicely because there's a lot going on in this background. And then this page will be done. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. You can find me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and I will try to leave all the links down below for the products I used today. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.